Hello everyone, welcome back. We're getting very close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, so please subscribe to support us and keep the content coming. Now, back to the story. At our anniversary party, I announced that we had been married for 19 and a half years. She quickly corrected me. No, 20. I calmly answered, no, sweetheart. Our marriage ended 6 months ago. The garden party was a perfect display of suburban elegance, carefully organized by my wife Sarah, to celebrate what everyone believed was our 20th year of married bliss. The air carried the sweet scent of blooming jasmine, mixed with the polite laughter of close friends who had gathered to honor our long relationship. Sarah looked stunning in a soft pink dress, every inch the devoted wife. She moved gracefully through the crowd, a glass of vintage champagne in hand. She had spent months planning every detail, from the guest list to the table settings, making sure everything appeared flawless. What she didn't realize was that the foundation of this entire celebration had been empty for months. I watched her from across the lawn, feeling a cold, clinical detachment that had quietly replaced love over the past 6 months. The smile on my face was carefully practiced. It was a mask necessary to keep my own plans hidden until the exact moment I chose to reveal them. As the sun slowly dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the manicured lawn, Sarah signaled for everyone to gather near the patio for the toast. She stood beside me, her hand resting gently on my arm. That touch once brought comfort, but now it felt like the weight of a heavy chain. I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate 20 years of love and partnership, she said, her voice smooth and perfectly rehearsed. It hasn't always been easy, but David and I have built something truly indestructible. The crowd let out a soft sigh of admiration. I could feel 50 pairs of eyes waiting for my response. I took a slow breath, aware of the small digital recorder in my pocket and the folder of documents waiting in my study. Stepping forward, I raised my glass until it caught the final golden rays of sunlight. I'd like to make a small correction, I began, my voice calm and steady. Sarah said we've been married for 20 years. But technically, it's only been 19 and a half. Sarah laughed lightly, the familiar sound she used to ease tension. She leaned closer with a playful smile. Oh, David, always the mathematician. It's 20 years today, sweetheart. Don't be silly, she whispered, her eyes warning me to stay on script. I didn't smile back. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air before a storm. No, sweetheart, I said clearly, looking straight into her eyes so everyone could hear. Our marriage ended exactly 6 months ago. The night I followed you to the waterfront hotel and watched you check in with my own brother. A collective gasp spread through the garden. It felt as though the oxygen had vanished. Sarah's face drained of color, turning a pale gray. The wine glass in her hand began to shake. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. In one sentence, the life she had pretended to build for 20 years collapsed. I placed my glass on the table, turned away from the woman I no longer recognized, and walked toward the house to complete the exit I had been preparing since the day trust was broken. The silence behind me was absolute. Through the open French doors, I could hear the steady ticking of the grandfather clock. Like a countdown to the end of Sarah's carefully maintained image, our guests stood frozen, eyes shifting between my calm expression and Sarah's unraveling composure. My brother, Michael, near the buffet table, suddenly became deeply interested in the stone patterns under his feet. His flushed face confirmed more than any photograph ever could. Sarah finally found her voice, though it sounded weak and strained. David, you're drunk. You're just stressed about work and making a scene, she said, grabbing at my sleeve in desperation. I pulled my arm away. Her touch felt like a burn. Reaching into my jacket, I took out my phone. I wish it were the wine, Sarah. But the sober truth is saved right here in my cloud storage, I said, activating the external speakers I had synced to the patio earlier that day. For 6 months, I lived in a house with a ghost. I watched you pretend to love me, while planning a future with the man who once shared my childhood bedroom. I pressed play. The garden filled with Sarah's recorded voice from 4 months earlier, captured by a hidden device in our car. She was laughing, telling Michael how much she hated the boring anniversary party she was organizing, and how she couldn't wait for the divorce settlement so they could finally reveal their relationship. The audio was clear, every cruel joke perfectly audible. Sarah's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the stone patio. The sharp sound seemed to wake the guests from their shock. Her mother gasped softly, and whispers began to spread, a low hum of judgment that would likely follow Sarah for years in this town. I looked at her, and for the first time in 2 decades, I didn't see the woman I once loved. I saw someone who had traded loyalty for a moment of betrayal. "The papers are on the desk in the study, Sarah," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos surrounding us. "I've already moved my belongings out, and the locks will be changed by 10 o'clock tonight. You wanted a life of excitement and secrecy with Michael. Now you have all the time in the world to enjoy it, but you won't be doing it on my dime or under my roof." She let out a dramatic wail, a loud, theatrical cry meant to stir sympathy. But the guests were already turning away. Their loyalty had shifted to the man who had been so publicly betrayed in his own home. I saw Michael trying to slip quietly toward the driveway, but our oldest friend stepped into his path. He didn't raise his voice. He simply shook his head in disgust and blocked the exit. What was meant to be an anniversary celebration had become a funeral for a marriage that had died long before the first guest arrived. A strange calm settled over me, the kind that only comes when the truth finally drowns out the lies. I walked through the crowd, ignoring the hands reaching out with hollow words of comfort, and headed toward the study to gather the only things that truly mattered now: my dignity and my future. I left the wreckage of Sarah's ambition scattered across the lawn behind me. The real ending wasn't the dramatic scene or the shock on our neighbors' faces. It was the quiet moment when I closed the front door for the last time and drove away toward a life rooted in truth. The aftermath of that party spread through the community like wildfire, leaving Sarah and Michael isolated in a town that valued loyalty above all else. Sarah quickly learned that a 20-year marriage was powerful social currency, and she had just reduced it to nothing. Without the financial stability and emotional structure I had provided, her life began to unravel at an alarming pace. My brother, who had always lived in my shadow, discovered that exposure brought a harsher light than obscurity ever had. Within a month, he lost his position at our family firm. The board decided they couldn't trust a man who would betray his own blood for a fleeting thrill. I didn't waste time monitoring their downfall or replaying the what-ifs of a marriage that had been hollow for longer than I wanted to admit. Instead, I used the clarity of freedom to focus on the parts of myself I had neglected while trying to keep Sarah happy. I finally took the sabbatical I had dreamed about for 10 years, traveling through the Mediterranean and rediscovering who I was before I became a husband to someone emotionally absent. I learned that a quiet dinner alone is far less lonely than sharing a table with someone who is lying to your face. The most beautiful part of this new chapter was realizing I didn't need to be a mathematician to calculate that the rest of my life would be infinitely better than the 19.5 years I had left behind. For the first time, I was living for myself. A year later, I was sitting on a balcony in Greece, watching the sun rise over the Aegean, and it hit me. I hadn't thought about Sarah or Michael in weeks. The anger was gone, replaced by a calm indifference that felt like true victory. Eventually, I met someone who valued honesty above everything else. A woman who didn't need an audience or a script to be genuine. Our relationship wasn't built on extravagant parties or expensive milestones, but on steady trust, the kind that grows when two people have nothing to hide. As I looked at the horizon, I felt grateful for that night in the garden. By ending my marriage at 19.5 years, I had saved the next 40 from being built on a lie. If you discovered your partner was living a double life with someone close to you, would you expose them publicly or walk away in silence? I'd love to know where you're listening from today. Nearly 85% of our viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you enjoyed this story about justice and rediscovering happiness, please hit that button. And check out our next video about a shocking Reddit cheating story where a husband uncovers the truth about his unfaithful wife.